Hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody, to our ninth Athlete to Entrepreneur panel. With this being the ninth panel, if I'm doing my math correctly, that means we brought you over 30 stories, interviews, presentations of athletes turned entrepreneurs from 30 different people. I'm not even talking about the Thrive After Sports podcast. I'm talking about just the Athlete to Entrepreneur panels. So, with that being said, if you are, first of all, thank you for joining us. Excuse me, where are my manners? If you are a current athlete, a former athlete, a parent of an athlete, a coach, someone who works in an athletic department, I highly encourage you, number one, to take notes, listen to yourself and the stories of these athletes, turned entrepreneurs that you're about to hear from. Feel free to ask questions. You know, we will be doing interview style, but all these amazing people are happy to answer questions for you. And what else did I want to say? The reason we do these, just to set the tone as we go into this, the reason we do these athlete to entrepreneur panels is to show that next generation of athletes that it's not just LeBron James, it's not just some of the household names that you may know, it's everyday people like you and I who are doing big things in the world. So let's get into it. I want you to hear from some of these phenomenal people. We have another fire lineup of athletes turned entrepreneurs for you today. As always, we're not going to waste any time. We're going to get in. We're going to get into this thing with a good friend of mine, Miss Erika Feyer. Erika is a certified life mastery consultant, a licensed psychotherapist with over 20 years of experience. She's the founder of Maximum Achievement Coaching, where she works with professional and collegiate athletes, as well as entrepreneurs and business professionals all around the world. As a sought after coach and international speaker, Erika specializes in delivering inspiring workshops, as well as transformational in depth coaching programs with a dynamic approach that turns ideas into life changing action to help clients achieve new heights of success. Please welcome the athlete to entrepreneur, Erika Feyer.
Hi, Taj.
Hi, Erika.
It's great to see you. Good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking some time to be with us on a Saturday. Definitely appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I usually kind of wrap up with acknowledgments, but I'm going to do it a little differently this time and start out with some acknowledgments because, Erika,
Okay.
you were one of the first people, and it's crazy to think it's been almost 3 years at this point, but you were one of the first people in 2018 to really show me love, really give me some words of encouragement about what I was doing, what I was looking to accomplish in the athlete transition space. So we fast forward 3 years, you've always consistently checked in, always showed me love, always, asked if there's any way you can support. And I just wanted to acknowledge you for that and say thank you for all that you do before we get into it. So
Thanks. It's my pleasure. And it's always, I've said this to you in private, but I really am of the mind that when people's heart are in the right place and they really want to serve others, anything I can do to support that. So it's my pleasure to be looped back in with you again and to see all of the awesome stuff that you're doing, Taj. It's awesome.
Thank you, Erika. I appreciate that. Well, I'm gonna put my Kleenex away for a second. We'll get into the discussion today. I don't even know if you and I have had this conversation, so this might be the first time I'm hearing some of this info too. But let's just start it out with kind of how your career transitioned after you left Purdue. You were a water polo player at Purdue. Did you have aspirations to go to the Olympics, or what was sort of the tail end of your career like?
Yeah, so I was a high school swimmer, and then at Purdue, we actually started, my friend and I, and then we recruited a couple of other women to start the women's water polo team at Purdue. So we started off practicing with the boys, and that ended very quickly because they did not want us there. So we just decided to start our own team. And to be really honest, water polo was kind of a newer thing to me. So I really didn't anticipate playing beyond college. But I did know, I remember my last tournament at Purdue I was a senior, and I remember like the whistle blew, it was over, and I was floating on my back and looking up at the ceiling in the pool and just thinking, okay, this is it. And I knew in that moment that I needed something else athletic. So I made the decision actually in that moment that I was going to start becoming an endurance athlete. And then I started getting into marathons and triathlons and Ironman triathlons from there.
Yeah, and I know you still do. You're still very active. You are. We'll get to this later, but you are a forever athlete, as Corey Camp always says. So I had no idea that you actually started. You and a friend started the water polo team at Purdue. That's fascinating. So would you say because you didn't have aspirations of playing at a professional level that gave you more of a softer landing after you graduated into the real world, as we say?
Definitely, definitely. I was blessed also with knowing that I just always wanted, ever since I was a kid, I loved helping people. So when I made the decision to choose a major, I think it was like halfway through my freshman year, I knew I wanted to become a therapist. So I was just like, I love supporting people. I love helping people. So that was another passion of mine. So I was, and I don't think this is common. So I don't expect that everyone would have this journey. But I honestly think, and this is part of how I work with my clients too, I have a spirituality component that has always been really important to me. And I kind of always look to that as a guide. And so knowing that I wanted to serve people in my profession, in a career as a therapist, and then also having kind of an outlet for my athletic and kind of physical, I liked pushing myself. So I wanted to get that in both arenas, from my career and from my amateur athletic pursuits outside of water polo.
Right. So at the time when you graduated, and it's fascinating that freshman year, you already knew that you wanted to be a therapist. I don't think a lot of, not just athletes, but people in general know what they want to do freshman year.
Right.
So props to you for having that clear vision. And then how did you know that you wanted to support specifically in the transition space? Because I mean, that was, even when you and I first connected, that was still a fairly new arena. So when you say you wanted to work with athletes, was it with anything specific, or did you already have transition in mind at the time?
Yeah, no, it kind of evolved. So I worked in a bunch of different settings as a therapist, knowing that at some point I wanted to start a private practice, and I was kind of too scared to do it for a number of years. But I'm really grateful for all of the experience. I worked in community mental health on the west side of Chicago. I worked in foster care. I worked in a hospital setting. And I worked in a corporate setting. So I got a lot of experience as a therapist before I kind of hung my shingle and had a private practice. And then once I did that, once I opened the doors for my private practice, it was kind of this interesting phenomenon where these athletes and their wives were finding me, because I'm a marriage and family therapist. So they were coming to me for couples therapy. And through that process, working with a number of different athletes, I started to notice that there were some gaps in the transition resources. And even if they were there and the athlete like accessing them for whatever reason, and also noticed that there was a really nice synergy between kind of me and the athletes and their spouses. And so from that space, it kind of gave birth to a new vision, because I thought I was living my dream. But when I started working with these athletes in a clinical setting for relationship therapy, I started to think like, wow, it would be really useful to have some support with kind of transitioning away from sport. Some of the athletes were still competing, some weren't, but that kind of opened my eyes to the need. And then I really made the decision from there to get certified as a coach, and then started maximum achievement coaching from that need that I experienced as I was a therapist. But it was funny because I remember thinking to myself, wait, I thought I was living my dream. Now this is a new dream. So like now I have way more knowledge about how that works because I've been studying it for the last 7 years, but it was an interesting kind of shift.
Yeah, so it sounds like you identifying those gaps while, like you said, talking to the spouses or significant others of athletes was the thing that had you make the leap to going into your own practice. It was that. It's almost like because you resonate, and you're a forever athlete, that was the thing that you felt so passionately about that you were like, this is the spark I've been looking for. Would you say that was the spark that was like, I have to go into my own practice now?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was kind of, I did wind up going into my private practice before I evolved, like before I got the athletes in my client base. But that was definitely the thing that was the impetus for me getting certified as a coach.
Got it. Okay, so that's what led to maximum achievement.
Yes.
Maximum achievement. Okay, that's what it was. I got it.
Yeah.
But you already had the private practice beforehand. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. You know, we're here. This is Athlete to Entrepreneur. We're here to talk about the business side of things as well.
Yep.
So, what was the number one? It's a two-part question. What was the decision like for you to be like, okay, now is the time to start my private practice? And then what was the road like to getting there? If you can give us a little bit behind the scenes on that aspect of it.
Totally. Well, like, I think I said this a little bit earlier, like I knew I wanted to be a business owner and have a private practice because I had a vision for my life about how I would, plan my clients around my kids and all of this stuff, which wound up happening way later in my life. But I started, first of all, in my private practice, I hired a business coach, and that was really useful to kind of help get things up and running for me. But when I made the decision to actually do it, I was still working at a hospital, and I started to notice there was this like kind of dread that I would have before going into work, which I thought was really surprising because I loved working with my clients, but I started to feel into that. And I was like, okay, so maybe this is the time, because the dread going to work, like doing things that I would love to do, I was kind of getting curious about that. And so kind of the discontent kind of ramped up. And that's when I was like, okay, I gotta do this. I gotta start my business. And I will say that I asked my supervisor, and I didn't really think that she was going to give me the answer that she gave me, but I asked my supervisor, I was like, would it be possible for me to go down to part-time so I could work at the hospital and then build my practice at the same time? And I'm like, they're inundated with clients. They definitely need me to stay. And she was like, no, we need you to stay on full time. And so then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to quit. And then I remember I went in my office and I closed the door. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just quit my job. I was like, what did I just do? So it was kind of like one of those things that I'm like, okay, well, I can't really turn back now.
Wow, that's such a cool story. That's like a movie moment like there where you're like, well, I can't turn back now. And I think a lot of people, you touched on the dread or the disdain for what you're doing, because work is such a big part of our lives. And I think a lot of people feel that, but don't necessarily take the leap. And I'm being a little bit biased now. I have to, we're talking to athletes, but right. I think a lot of athletes have a little bit more tendency to be able to make that leap and just say, I'm going to go for it. I succeeded in this other arena. I mean, if we can tap into that as athletes, it makes it easier to make that shift, because you're used to having your back against the wall and having to fight to reach your goal.
Yes.
Do you think that it kind of fueled you a little? I mean, it probably fueled you when she was like, you just told her you're going to quit on the spot. You're just like, well, I'm going to have to quit. You just did it just like.
I told her if I can't go down to part-time, I will have to quit, like in that conversation. And then she was like, well, we need you full-time. And then I was like, okay, well, I guess I have to quit. It's like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I knew I was loving my practice because I was building it at the same time, but I was noticing like all of my energy, I want to do what I'm doing after work, not in work, like here. So I was noticing that pull. And so that's what made me take the leap, because I'm like, I really am energized by this. And if I can't focus on that during the day, at least 2 days a week or 3 days a week, then I don't want to do this anymore. But it was scary. Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. The scary side of it. This is what I want to get into, because this is a pivotal moment. This is like watching a documentary right now by hearing this. So she says, no, you can't be part-time. You say you quit. And then, and this applies across the board, because obviously you're a therapist, but whether you're a therapist or a business owner, there's a period where you left your job, your safety net was, you removed the safety net, and now you're like, okay, I have to get these first few clients and build up a book of business. What was some of that process like, while also battling the fear of like, is this gonna work out?
Yeah, well, here's something. So what I'm seeing in retrospect about my journey is so aligned with what I work with my clients on. Is like, if you really are passionate about something, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, kind of organizes to support you in that. So like I said, I was working at the hospital and kind of seeing like my private practice clients at night. And then when I was thinking about, I want to just go all in on this private practice, of course I had all of the things. What about your insurance? I have asthma. It's very well controlled. I've had it since I was a kid, but my medication, if without insurance, costs a lot of money. So that was a big, like, oh my gosh, you don't have benefit. And I was single, so I didn't have like a, husband or spouse or partner to kind of fall back on to support. So I'm like, you've got your own bills. What about benefits? And, so you think of all the things. But I have to admit, the minute I made that decision, that firm decision, and said, I guess I have to quit, I think that day I got like 3 new calls for my private practice. And that was without doing any advertising. I was paneled with one insurance company, Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO, and people were just finding me on there. So that was just, I felt like, I like to say God's way of nudging me, like, you're doing the right thing. But it didn't happen until I made that decision and said I'm quitting, because the referrals were kind of sporadic up until that point.
Right. Yeah. This, I wanted to ask you too, because you mentioned family, and you said one of your goals in your long-term vision was to be able to spend time with your family. Mm-hmm. So, as a therapist, as a businesswoman, as an entrepreneur, how do you manage all these different moving parts and also make sure that you allocate time to be a great mother as well?
That's a good question. Well, I'm still kind of working with that one. My son he's going to be 2 in August. So I definitely have moments where I feel like I'm dropping every single ball. But I have to say that when I work with my clients on developing a crystal clear vision of what they would love. So it's a heart space. You're coming from what would you really love, not what do you think is possible. And so I practice what I preach. And I did the same thing. Like, I got pregnant when I was really old because that was part of my vision. I thought I was going to have babies in my 30s. I got pregnant when I was 45. And so after practicing, these things that I'm working with my clients on, I had a vision for what I wanted my business to look like and the kind of mom I wanted to be. So I didn't like fly into it without any sort of like internal, I always like to call it like your internal GPS, like where your heart space is. And I made the decision to, have certain days a week where I'm just fully working, and obviously, I see my son after work, but there's Mondays and Fridays where I do have some support here and there on those days, but those are days that are dedicated to my son and time with him. And that was a decision I made when I was on maternity leave, when I was really feeling into what I would love, because I love serving my clients. I love serving my business. And I also, I've been given this beautiful gift of a baby at 47, or 46, I had him. And I'm like, I'm not going to just bypass this by working all the time, because it was part of what I had designed for my life. So it was another kind of leap. Like, I don't know if this is all going to work, but this is what feels in alignment with me and my values. And so here I am, I'm going to go for it. And so that's I'm still navigating, and at any point, I always give myself permission. And I think this is something that I think is important for other people too, is like, at any point you can reevaluate, like give yourself permission to go down a path. And if it doesn't feel right, you can tweak it, so that's something that I have to remind myself, like, at any point I could add back in Mondays and Fridays, or at any point I could add back in, whatever for my business. But right now, this is what is serving me and my clients. And I've been able to grow my business by means of 3 days a week for my clients. Not that I don't do anything on Mondays and Fridays. I do when he's napping. I'm like on the computer and doing my thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I remember a couple of times when we were on the Athlete Soul calls last year, you would have him on there with you on your lap while we're doing the calls. And I always thought that was so cool, because it's like, you're literally doing both. You're not sacrificing. You didn't say, oh, I can't make the meeting, but then you weren't on there and not giving your newborn at the time attention. So I always thought that was really cool. And that's why I wanted to ask you that question, because, shout out to all the moms who tune in. Like, I think it's important for people to hear the other side of it. Like you said, it's not always glorious, and you give yourself permission to figure it out. I think you said sometimes you feel like you're dropping all the balls. And for someone like you, people from the outside looking in may be like, oh, Erika has it all together. Erika has it all figured out. But then when you share that, that like I even had a sigh of relief. You know, I'm not a mother. I don't have kids. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't have to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. I do want to take advantage of the fact that we have a therapist on the line in you. What advice can you give to athletes? I don't want to say who are lost. I've been trying to get away from that. Athletes who are in the discovery process and trying to figure out who it is they want to become and what they want to do now that they're no longer competing.
Yeah, that's such a good question. Well, first of all, and I think this is so hard. I mean, this has been hard for me, and I knew I wasn't going to become a professional athlete, but like just knowing, having an understanding and a knowing, like an inner knowing that you are way more than anything you do. I think that that's really important. And I think just in our society now, it's so easy to just be defined by what your job is or what your career is or your sport or so that's one of the things that when I speak with clients, we look at like the identity piece and then really like getting some clarity around like, what is it about you? What makes you who you are? And then, you know, everyone is unique as their thumbprint, at risk of sounding cliche, but like there are unique skills and talents and abilities and even things that have made you an amazing athlete that are absolutely transferable. So what I love working with clients in is kind of igniting the fire of another dream, because generally speaking, there's been a fire there for whatever the sport is. And, you know, it ends it for whatever reason. There's all the stories, as we all know. But I would just say, like, first of all, reach out for help. And then second of all, that there's absolutely something out there for you that has your name on it, that ignites you just as much, if not more sometimes, than the, being the athlete and performing the sport. And realizing like you're more than this. You're more than anything that you will do. You're more than anything that you will accomplish. You are more. And so I think that is one of the most important things. And I mentioned spirituality earlier, and I'm not talking about going to church. I'm talking about like a belief that there's a power breathing you. Call it the inverse, call it God, whatever you want to call it. But that power that allows us to wake up has life wanting to express through us. So all we have to do is kind of get in alignment with that and then make decisions from that place. And I've seen it time and time again. Things will open up. So even if you're in kind of this phase of kind of unrest or chaos or feeling like you're stuck, I would actually say that that's the good news, because now you have the opportunity to reflect and find something else. If you're just kind of going through the motions and not really giving any time or attention to those feelings, you don't have an opportunity to change anything.
I really love the way you phrased that, because I reflect back to my time when I was trying to figure it out, and there was a lot of self-loathing, and not in a healthy sense of like processing the emotions, but just self-loathing, feeling sorry for myself, and not putting in. And the reason I'm sharing this is for anyone who may be going through this, so we can really absorb everything that Erika's sharing right now. And then also, I love what you shared about getting excited about this period and looking at it as an opportunity. I think if I would have had you in my ear, anyone in my ear at that time saying, hey, don't be down about this, like just create. And that's the great part about it, is that, like you said, once you're in that period of discovery, you can create, you can start to create. So it's actually a good thing if you think about it. And then I love another thing you shared about how it's about, you can find something just as exciting, if not more. It's the if not more that gets me excited. Like when I feel like it's game day when I get on one of these things. My armpits are sweating. I'm nervous. I'm like, let's go, another panel. And so I think if people can really get that ingrained in their mind that there is something more, you just have to not only do the work to discover it and find it, but also cultivate it. And that's how things really start to open up for you.
One more thing that I wanted to just add as a therapist, and I think it's really important. It doesn't mean you're doing a bypass on the grief or the loss or any of the feelings that are associated with stopping a sport that you loved and that you devoted your whole life to for X amount of years. So it's kind of a both and, it's not an either or. And I say that because even as a therapist and as a coach and as an athlete, I find myself trying to just bypass the feelings a lot. Like, okay, well, what's the learning in this? Or how can I get better? But it's like, no, there's that phrase, you got to feel to heal, it's true. So it's kind of like having the feeling and allowing for the grief and the confusion and whatever. So you're allowing for it and also knowing this is an opportunity. So it's not, you're not just being like, oh, I'm putting on my rose-colored glasses and everything's going to be fine, because that's really superficial and that's not what I'm encouraging. So I just wanted to mention that.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. Got to process it. You heard it first from a therapist, folks. You heard it. So listen to that. Make sure you process what you're going through. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to suppress it or numb it. Talk to somebody. Even if it's not a therapist, talk to a family member. I always tell people just, talk to a best friend or anybody just to get it off your chest. But of course, eventually you might want to seek some professional help as well. I want to go back to what we were talking about with this creating the next chapter of your life as an athlete. So I look at you, my question is kind of more so not about how do you create it, but more so about staying open to opportunities. And the reason I say that is because I think a lot of times, and I was guilty of this too, when you're an athlete, because you're good at a certain thing, the world is kind of handed to you on a silver platter. So you're used to everyone coming to you with opportunities and different things because you're so good. Whereas when that's over, you have to actually be the one to go out and be proactive. And you do so many different things. I mean, you have your private practice, your coaching business. Every time I look up, you have another webinar. I know you're partnered with, you and I are both coaches for Athlete Soul. Shout out to Miriam Glez, who's been on the panel. You also do some work with ATS, Athlete Transition Services, with Jonathan Orr, who's also on the panel. So you have all these different things, but they didn't necessarily just show up on your doorstep. Can you speak a little bit about staying open to opportunities as they come, being able to identify them, but also being in full out creation mode to make those opportunities? That's my question. I know I went a few different directions, but
I think it's a brilliant question. And one of the things that, and I alluded to this earlier, but like I mentioned, a vision. So that's one of the things that I think is so powerful, is asking yourself the question, what would I love? And I work with my clients in a 4-quadrant system. So you look at your health, your relationships, your time and money freedom, and your vocation, your career. And when you are coming from a soul place, what would I love? Not what do I think is possible or what do I think I can do based on history, but what would I love? Like if truly anything was possible for me, what would I love to create? And then dream that up and as much specificity as you possibly can. And here's the thing that I think is so powerful. And I learned this from my mentor, Mary Morrissey, with the Brave Thinking Institute, which is where I got certified as a coach, but then you reverse engineer it. So everything's worked out. You're living the life of your wildest dreams. You've dreamed it up. You've got the house, you've got the career, you're making the impact that you want to make. You're serving the people you want to serve. You're being the person you would love to be in the world. And then your eyes are opened to what you're saying, the opportunities, the connections, so just for an example, the way Jonathan Orr and I got connected, I was talking with one of my therapists in my private practice, one of my clients, and he just alluded to the fact that somebody that he knew was also doing something that I wanted to do in the athlete transition space, because he was also an athlete. So he was telling me. And then I was like, so I looked him up online. And then I was like, I'm just going to reach out to him because it sounds like he's doing great work. So I did. And then I think within 30 minutes, he called me. So I was like, see, you make this welcome, but you can't make this stuff happen, but it won't be made welcome in the absence of a crystal clear vision of what it is that you would love to create and who you want to serve and how you want your life to kind of unfold for you. So I think that's really important because once the vision is clear, you can attract opportunities and resources and people. You're on the same wavelength, so to speak. And this is another thing that one of my mastermind partners used to work for Apple when Steve Jobs was working there. And he wasn't working directly with Steve Jobs, but he was the director of finance. And one of the things that he said was so amazing to watch was that Steve Jobs could easily just come in faced with a gazillion opportunities and he'd be like, nope, yes, nope, nope, nope. And it's because his vision was crystal clear. So he was able to make really fast decisions because he knew stuff that was not in alignment with his vision and what was. And I think it's the same exact thing for our lives. And when we're making the leap to entrepreneurship, or, have a vision of what it is that you would love. And I mean, that's easier said than done. I mean, I work with my clients on this through, a lot of different workshops and things like that. And also my coaching, so that people can get really clear on what it is that they would love for their lives. But I think that's probably the number one thing that I would say is a game changer.
Right. You can't execute on those opportunities or be able to identify them if you're not clear. And like you said, or if you're not putting yourself in position like you did with reaching out to Jonathan. Mm-hmm. Oh, that was so good. I wish we had more time, Erika. We're definitely going to have you back on. I think you and I will do a solo episode because I know we have some exciting projects in the works, which we will keep under wraps for right now. But before we get out of here, can you please tell people how they can get in contact with you, where they can follow you on social media, all of that, please?
Yes, thanks. So my website is maximumachievementcoaching.com, which I know is a mouthful. On Instagram, I'm just Erika Fay. So it's pretty easy. It's ErikaFay. You can find me right there. And that's my Maximum Achievement kind of page. And I'm also on Twitter at Erika LMFT. So that's an easy find too. And I'm on Facebook, Maximum Achievement Coaching on Facebook.
Awesome. Well, Erika, I know I gave you some mushy acknowledgments up front, but I'm going to say thank you again for all that you've done in my life, for all that you work, all the work that you do, not only for the athlete community, but everyone that you serve and impact. So definitely appreciate you taking some time to be here with us on a Saturday, and we will be in touch very soon. Thank you again.
Awesome. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Taj.
Thanks, Erika. Bye-bye. Awesome, folks. How about that, Erika Fay, ladies and gentlemen? All right, next up, Dr. Kevin Johnson, the good doctor, folks. Let me find this. Now, this is an impressive bio right here, folks. So check this out. Dr. Kevin Johnson's experience, coupled with his education, has been a great asset to the sport industry for many years. His academic experience as a professor at Johnson & Wales University, ASA College, and Broward College has given him the opportunity to teach a multitude of business, administration, and sports management courses. Recently, he co-authored a best-selling book called Stereotypes of a Black Male. In addition, Dr. Johnson is the founder and podcast host of a show called ThriveAfterSports, which is available on all podcast platforms. Go check that out. Dr. Johnson is an active member with the community in areas of education as well as mental health, and he currently serves as the vice chair of the Broward Advisory Board and chair of the Children's Literacy Initiative Broward Development Committee. Dr. Johnson is also a board member of the Healing Arts Institute of South Florida. And lastly, he's a member of the National Society of Black Sports Professionals. Please welcome the athlete to entrepreneur, Dr. Kevin Johnson.
Good afternoon. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing great. The good doctor is in the building, folks. The good doctor. Man.
I appreciate you. I appreciate the intro, and I appreciate you taking the time to invite me again on your show.
Yes, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here. I know you're a busy man. Appreciate you taking the time out. I've been looking forward to this. This is the exclusive interview because you and I, we've had several conversations, but now is my chance to really get deep into the story. And I know you're going to bring a lot of value to the audience today, man. Athletes, entrepreneurs, people who are in that industry, especially with all your years of experience. Now, I have to ask you before we go forward, did I leave anything out of the bio? Because I know there's a lot of credentials in there. I just want to make sure.
No, you hit everything on the tee, and I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now, I say this is exclusive because you and I have had many different calls about many different things, but this is like the first time I'm getting to hear the full history. So I'm gonna just let you pick. Where should we start out in the journey of Dr. Kevin Johnson?
I don't know. I don't know. Whatever questions you have for me, I'm open, and wherever you want to start with my journey. I'm open to starting wherever you're ready for me to partake in.
Okay, fair enough. Let's do this. Let's talk about the first time you really started to solidify yourself or establish yourself in the athletic arena. I know you work with several different teams. You have a lot of different projects. Number one, how did you decide that you wanted to be heavily involved in sports? And then how did you kind of just get the ball rolling in that industry?
So, great question. Great question. So I started, I played college basketball at Nova Southeastern University. And then I had the opportunity to have an internship with the Miami Dolphins. I was there for about 7 months. And, you know, I love telling this story. I know a lot of people are like, why do you like to tell the story is uh, that is not like the aha moment, like the glory moment? I said, because we all have a journey in life. And if you don't understand the process and understand that there's going to be some great times, there are going to be some times where it's a little bit low, it challenges you to be a better person. Those are the stories that people really need to hear and listen to, because it helps other people who may be going through the same trivial situations to be able to know that there's a brighter side to it. So I was working for a professional team while I was down here in South Florida. And needless to say, I was there for 7 months. And I was like, man, this is probably the best job. I'm glad this is my first time working with a professional team. And boom, there was rules to this game. And when I say rules to this game, understanding that, you know, if you're working with a professional team, they don't want you really talking to the players. If coaches are saying, hey, how you doing, Mr. Johnson? I hope you have a great day. They really don't want you to interact. They really want you just to give a nod head and keep going. And so with that being said, I wasn't there working for that organization after 7 months. I got let go because I started making friends at the organization. Things that I've taught, you know, I was being taught from a West Indies culture where, you know, somebody says hello, you say hello back, you greet people, you respect people the same way they respect you. And so the supervisor that I worked for at that time didn't really see the values that I brought to the organization. I don't think she really understood, you know, what are the things that I was doing that was correct, that are in line with the organization. And just because I was taught or brought up in the right way, that did not come across well within the culture of the organization. So she let me go. It was a tragedy to me at that particular time. But hindsight, looking forward now, I'm like, man, that's probably the best thing that has happened to me. So for me, every time that a door has closed, something bigger opens every single time. And so hence me mentioning the Life After Sports podcast. Once one door closes, be ready for another door to open. So that was the start of my sports career in a nutshell. I started working for Broward College as the assistant coach for women's basketball, and that started my journey within coaching college women's basketball for 10 years. I had some great teams. I've worked for 3 different organizations within those 10 years as a head coach as well as an assistant. And those experiences has tremendously brought me to where I'm at today, you know, comfortable in making mistakes, learning from them, cultivating those relationships and moving on to bigger and better things. So just to put it in a nutshell, that's how the industry of me working within sports started. And at that particular time in 2008, I started an organization. I started my own company called Johnson Management Group, where I was not only doing philanthropy for players, helping them with camps, helping them with image and branding. It started off with just doing helping professional athletes to change their image or their brand. So if they didn't have a brand, we were helping to establish that, helping them to do things within the community. And then from that, it parlayed into doing management, marketing, and brand development. And so work with some big names, NFL guys as well. I've done some projects with some Olympians as well. And so I'm great to be almost 12 to 15 years in the business and still moving. But for me, my passion is educating young adults or young kids that are growing up that never thought that they could be within the sports space on the business side. And so that is truly my passion, is to inspire the next generation with whatever I'm doing.
Man, thank you for that, Dr. Kev. I'm inspired by that. I definitely want to come back to, the beginning stages of Johnson Management Group, but I want to pull out something you shared about your experience during that internship? Because I think
Oh,
this is huge, and I appreciate you sharing this. It's crazy that you were let go essentially for being a people person and for being yourself and trying to make connections, which is the key to any success in life. You were just trying to put yourself in position and be a good man, and you were let go for that. And I think it ties into something that I have. You've probably seen this with a lot of former athletes where when they wrap up their careers and they go into the workplace or just trying to find their footing, a lot of times athletes can be told that they're too much, because you go into the office or whatever job you're in, and
yeah.
everybody's there just to check a box and collect a paycheck, and you're like, okay, let's go, let's get it, let's win, let's be at the top of our field. And not everybody thinks like that, and a lot of people feel isolated, especially if you're not surrounded by other people with the same mentality. So I appreciate you sharing that part of your journey, because I know by people hearing that, they're gonna be like, "Oh, it's not just me. I'm not crazy. Or I don't have to tone it down. I can be myself and go elsewhere."
Yeah. And it's just being comfortable and understanding, understanding who you are. I think at that time I was really fresh out of college, first entry level job, working with that organization. And boom, like, to me, that was a travesty. And I was like, I feel like I'm blackballed. I feel like I need to go and, file a complaint with human resource. And, my mentor at that time, and I'm proud to say his name is Twan Russell. He just got a job working as an athletic director for St. Thomas Aquinas here in South Florida. And Twan was like, do not do that. You don't need to do that. You don't want to blackball yourself. And I'm grateful, because when I started working with athletes and different clients, the same lady who fired me was the same lady I had to write an email. Hey, can I be able to get some cheerleaders? Can I be able to get this organization? And looking back, I don't know if she remembered or whatever the case is, but she's continued to help me along the journey with dealing with professional athletes. So if I burned the bridge at that particular time because I was in my emotions, I was young, I was like vibrant, I'm like, no, this is not fair, then, I don't know what may have happened. But I think sometimes it's great to have other people in your circle that looks out for your best interests. And you may not know it at that particular time, but like I said, looking backwards now at that situation and looking forward to where I'm going, that was a blessing in disguise to be able to have that mentor. So I think it's great to have great leadership, great mentors around you, so that it helps you to check off the box and have an accountability partner, so that you're not making mistakes that you cannot bounce back from, if you understand what I'm coming from.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's huge too. Like, to have people around you. And like you said, thank God you had that person in your ear to be able to say, don't start acting cool. Just go somewhere else. That's the best thing you can do. Man, solid advice right there, man. Solid advice. Let's bring it back to Johnson Management Group. You said you founded that in 2008, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So I have a two-part question, because obviously in 2008, this was, social media was around, but it wasn't like what it is today.
Correct.
How did you have the vision to be able to say, all right, I'm going to help athletes with their branding and be able to help them really succeed? Like, what had you just, because it went from an idea to actually you creating it and being able to start assisting athletes. What was that process like, from the formation to actually getting into helping people out with their brands?
So the crazy thing is, it started out me while I was coaching at Broward College. I was coaching the women's basketball team. Every summer I would do a free camp. I would do a free basketball camp, and then some summers would charge, but I would do it with one of my great friends. His name is Stan Remy. He's one of the top NBA trainers down here in South Florida, has his own gym. And so started doing basketball camps. We just had so many athletes that would just come to the gym, play with the kids, and they saw what we were truly doing. And at that moment, it clicked for me. It was like, I'm doing something here for the community, but I have athletes that are coming here on their own time and saying, hey, I love what you guys are doing. How can I be able to pour into what you guys are doing? If that's money, monetarily, if it's me just showing up and giving a word to these young kids about staying in school, respecting your parents, following your dreams and never giving up. And it started from that. That's where the idea sparked about JMG. And I said, there's something here. And so continue to do the camps. I had players keep coming and say, hey, Kev, how can I be a part? How can I donate? How can I give back? And it started from philanthropy. That's exactly how Johnson Management started. It started from me wanting to give back to the community, and have a professional athlete see what I was doing on my own and say, hey, how can we be able to give back to what is going on at this unit, at this college? And so I started a company. I had a couple players. On the business side, I didn't really understand what I was getting myself into, but because I was so passionate and I wanted to inspire others, that I just went ahead and started the company. You know, at that time, I didn't know about doing retainers on players, or how does this work with percentages of what you bring to the table. I didn't know none of that. Like, I'm being honest with you, didn't know none of that. Had to learn that process along the way. And so now looking back, I'm like, wow, I really started from ground up, but it started with an idea. And it wasn't for the money. It was because I wanted to impact and I wanted to inspire. Once you figured out what that niche and your purpose, then you could be able to orchestrate, okay, how are we going to facilitate the negotiations? How does this contract works? Am I making sure that I'm benefiting the player and the player doesn't feel like I'm just benefiting myself? So it's levels to it, to be honest with you. And I went through a great time where I had a lot of clients. Then I went through a downfall where clients was getting hurt, they were getting injured, they were retiring, or they wanted to go take their services somewhere else. And I think if you're able to understand, listen to your customers, listen to your clients, and then also taking a consideration of that in business as an entrepreneur, that you're going to have the highs and then you're going to have the lows. You got to be able to figure out that balance. And as you are walking through this journey, that there are going to be some good times, there are going to be some bad times. You got to figure out what's that even kill? Like, how can you be able to maneuver? Social media is changing. The marketing is changing. Branding is changing. The whole sports industry is changing. How are you able to not just only you? I don't want to be a trend. I want to be a staple. All right. It's a difference. I'm pretty sure you've seen or heard about a new artist, one hit one that had a great song. I mean, we go down now, we can list different artists right now. They had a one-hit wonder, and then you haven't heard about them ever again. I look at that as business. Do I want Johnson Management to be a one-hit wonder with one great client, or do I want to be even kill, and I want to be able to take clients from where they are on this platform to a high level and continue to do the same thing? Longevity for me, sustainability for me, not just a trend. And that's like really what pushes me every day. That I don't want to be a trend. I don't want to be a one-hit wonder. I want to build a legacy.
Man, I don't want to be a trend. I want to be a staple. Boom! Drop the mic on that. Drop the mic on that one right there. That's a heavy hitter right there. My goodness. Okay, man. Thank you for that. That was a lot of insight right there into the mindset that went into everything that you're doing. And speaking of legacy, you didn't just stop there. You didn't just, you kept on going. You kept on building. What happens next after you get JMG off the ground? What was the next move that you made, or next several moves that you made after that?
I was at that particular time. I got JMG off the ground, doing very well. That's 2008. I think I really hit with JMG at between 2011 and 2013. Those probably was like my best years, 2011 to maybe 2013, 2014. Decided to stop coaching, wanted to go ahead and educate myself and go get the doctorate level, get the doctorate degree. I started my first doctoral program in 2012. And I remember this bright as day at University of Maryland, University College. Went there. I was there for a year and a half. I didn't do too well. I'm just being honest with you. I did not. The focus wasn't there. I was enrolled in the wrong program at that particular time. And I just wasn't there. If you're not going to be 100% in what you're doing, don't do it. If you're going to do 75%, you're going to get 75% results. And so I got out of that program because that wasn't the right program for me. And I wasn't giving my all, because at that particular time, my business was booming. And so obviously business is booming. You're paying more attention to the business than you are doing a doctoral program. So I got out the doctoral program. Business was booming. Like I told you, we had those highs and lows. Business was great. Then business came down. It wasn't as great. 2014, 2015. I went back to school. I went back and got my doctorate. I said I went back and start 2016. And I know me and you've been talking for a while, because obviously I was trying to finish off this last couple months of my dissertation. Thank God I graduated May 14th. I'm done. Dr. Kevin Johnson is done with the dissertation. So it took me 5 years. It took 4.5, almost 5 years to finish something that I initially started in 2012. So that attests to me not giving up. There's always going to be challenges in the way. It's not about you quitting. It's about how do you get back up? How do you push towards that, that threshold of it's challenging. And, if everybody was able to do it, they'll be giving out doctorate degrees all over the place. And that's not it. It's a 1% club, to be honest with you. And so, just having that opportunity to be impactful, to learn from my mistakes, and then also to challenge myself throughout the process, like understanding it's not easy with business, being an entrepreneur. Why, people ask, why are you going for your doctorate? It is not for me. It's not just to have the accolades. It's about how can I empower and educate and engage in other conversations with other like-minded individuals so that I can be able to help the masses. So that was my reason for going and finishing the program. And so I hope I answered your question in a mouthful.
No, you did. Yeah. Congratulations on that. That was, I remember, yeah, it was just a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, in May that you just officially became. I've been calling you doctor since I met you, but you know what I mean?
It's okay. Sometimes you have to speak things into fruition. So to be honest,
what I was gonna say. Yeah.
If I really had my friends, they would go back on my Instagram and tell me when I put Dr. Kevin Johnson, and I wasn't even a doctor yet. Now, in the world of academia, you're not supposed to do that. They frown on that. So you're not supposed to be saying you're a doctor. You're not. But in my world, I was like, look, I'm looking at it every day. It's pushing me to be like, somebody's going to say, are you done yet? If my friends that really know me, they're going to say, are you done? Because you're calling yourself Dr. Kevin Johnson. You're not a doctor yet. So now I can attest and say I'm done. So don't come for me.
I love it. That was genius. You painted yourself into a corner, so you had to get it done.
You had to get it. And someone that I heard, I'm pretty sure you know who he is, Eric Thomas, one of
course
big time motivational speakers. When I was coaching women's basketball, I used to let my girls listen to his speech about I can't breathe, and him talking about, if you want to breathe, you work as hard. I don't want to butcher it, but it's one of his major staple videos from the beginning of his career. And I had my players listen to it, and he talks about when he was going for his PhD and how CJ, who's his right-hand man, had to check him at one point and was like, hey man, are you going to finish this program or what? And I just think everybody should have one person in your corner that's your accountability partner that's going to check you. For me, it was Dr. Richard Lewis, who checked me because he was my mentor as well as my dissertation coach. So he was like, look, when are you going to finish this? Like, for real, you're holding yourself back. So, to be honest with you, that's probably one of the hardest things that I had to kind of really do was to finish that type of program, because it takes so much research and brain power, and then, going with your dissertation committee and that whole process in a nutshell. So I'm glad that I'm finished, but the real inspiration for me is that I can be able to inspire the next generation and be able to write books, be able to write ebooks, be able to do symposiums. When you hit that academic excellence, is like you really want to push that narrative. So for me, coaching was great. Running Johnson Management is great, but how can I be able to impact and inspire the next generation for years to come? And it's not going to be if I'm here. They can physically hear my voice and I'm talking, but if there's books and there's ebooks and there's curriculums and there's different programs that are going to be going while I'm not even here anymore, that's the legacy for me. How were you really able to impact others? And so that's my inspiration, and hopefully that it inspires somebody else to go ahead and move the needle as well.
Oh, 100%. It inspires me, that's for sure, and everybody listening. So I appreciate you sharing that part of your journey too. There's a lot of ground we could cover in terms of everything else you've done, but I would be remiss if we got out of here we didn't talk about the Life After Sports podcast. Can you please tell everyone, what was the mindset behind that? You're already working on a doctorate, or were working on a doctorate. What made you decide to start the podcast, and what was all that about? I'd love to hear more about it.
So the podcast came about, I think it was 2020. This is around COVID time. And it was Super Bowl of last year, to be honest with you. And I had an event at the Dania Beach Casino, and it was just an event I had professional athletes that were there currently. I had former athletes that were there, and then I had just industry professionals. And I just wanted to hear their viewpoint on about life after sports. This is the topic. I said, I was thinking about doing a podcast. What do you guys think? I really want your input. And kind of it was just something that I threw out there just to hear what they would say. And they were like, Kevin, I love the idea. I think that podcast is the way to go right now. And I really wanted to give something where it was information, where it was authentic, where I could be able to help educate, share perspectives, as well as discuss the business aspects of the sports world within the sports industry from people who are former athletes, current athletes, and industry leaders. So that's how Life After Sports podcast came about. And I wanted I just really wanted people to come on the show that I could be able to have a conversation with and be authentic. Because I think in the social media platforms, I think you have professional athletes who are very authentic about who they are. And then you have some people who are not. They're doing it just for the numbers, for the likes, for the algorithms of Instagram, so they could be able to move the needle so they can get checks. And I said, the younger generation is watching this, and so they're going to have a false sense of what life really is in regards to being a professional athlete or working within the sports industry field. And I wanted to give something that was real and authentic. So we done one season already, we're on season 2. But we've done 30 episodes of just different athletes from the WNBA to NBA to boxing to we've baseball. We've touched different sports, a different array of sports. So the motto for the podcast is, when one door closes, a whole new set of opportunities begin. And so we just talked about my life in regards to the internship, and that didn't work. And then, you could be coaching at one school. You don't do very well. I coached at one school for 1 year. We didn't have a good season. The last person they brought in was the first person that got fired. And that was me. So, I think if people are not open to talking about their failures, how authentic is it to really discuss your success? You really can't, because success wasn't built like this. It happens over a period of time. And so that's the reason I came up with the Life After Sports, and how it was able to help other players deal with, hey, I'm not playing in the league anymore, but hey, I'm not the only one going through this. I'm not the only one suffering with mental health issues. I'm not the only one that are dealing with financial issues. And then you hear about these players who are leaving or, changing careers, and abruptly, guess what? Just like a person like me who may work 9 to 5 and I don't have a job anymore. If you're a professional athlete and you blow out your knee tomorrow, guess what? If the contract that you signed did not cover you and your injury, your career could be done. And so, that person is making millions of dollars and somebody else is making maybe 6 figures, but the industry is still the same. Because guess what? If you don't perform or you cannot perform, they can let you go. Mm-hmm. And so the reason of the podcast was really to highlight that and to really help players, help sports industry professionals, and people who are just maybe don't have anything to do with sports, but give people a sense of hope that, I could be able to make it out on the better side if something was to happen to me negatively, if I lost a job. And it's really about changing your attitude about it. If you want to stay in a funk, you're going to stay in a funk. You're not going to talk to anybody. But if you're like, man, woe is me. I'm not the only person who went through this. And I seen how they were able to overcome these obstacles, then I can be able to do the same thing. So that's the reason why I pushed the Life After Sports podcast, and it's doing very well.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome, Dr. Kev. Great show, great mission. Highly encourage everyone to go check it out. Life After Sports podcast on all podcast platforms. One final question for you, Dr. Kev, and it's perfect because you mentioned legacy several times. You've already accomplished so much to date. what's next for Dr. Kevin Johnson? What's on the horizon? We could talk long term, short term. What you got cooking over there, Dr. Kev?
Oh man, you want me to tell you what? So the plan is to write more books. That's the next plan. Ebooks is next. And really just find a platform where I could be able to inspire younger professionals that are interested in this type of field and doing symposiums. I think that's that's the next push for me, symposiums and books, and being able to target young professionals and professional athletes, former professional athletes, where we can all come together in a platform where we can all help each other and educate each other. Because if we educate each other, then we don't have to be liable to making the same mistakes that other athletes or other people have done before. So I want to form a platform where I'm able to have things like this, like what we're doing right now, where people can listen in and give their perspective on what's going on, but do it on a platform where people can actually, now that I won't say COVID is over, but it is transitioning back to a normal sense of routine for us, that we can be able to meet each other and do networking mixers and those type of things. So that's the next stage for me in my career on that platform.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Excited. We would definitely be tuning in with that journey, watching that unfold. You know, I'm excited to pull up with one of the symposiums or events one of these days.
No, definitely. Stay tuned. It's coming.
Yes, sir. Well, Dr. Kev, this has been a master class. Thank you for giving us some time away from the fam on a Saturday. Before we get out of here, please tell people, we already talked about the Life After Sports podcast, but tell people how else they can get in touch with you or reach out, all of that good stuff.
We'll do it. And then look, I couldn't come on your show and not talk about my book. You know, I'm not gonna go into detail about it, the stereotypes of a black male. I know you mentioned it, but I also want people to know they can go on my Instagram, Dr. Kevin Johnson, and you can go on the LinkedIn bio and purchase the book if you're interested. Feel free. If you have any questions or you want me to go ahead and autograph the book for you, you can be able to message me in my DM. Also, Life After Sports, the website is laspodcast.com. You can go there. You can put in your information that you'll get newsletters or the next information on the next show, who we'll interview next. So feel free to reach out. So on those two platforms, Life After Sports, you can also there as LAS_podcast for Instagram, but on the website is laspodcast.com. And then as well, if you're trying to get a hold of me, at Dr. Kevin Johnson on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Everybody, if you're tuning in and listening to the recording, go tap in with Dr. Kevin Johnson. Thank you again for being here with us. A lot of value, a lot of gems dropped, a lot of mics dropped today. So Appreciate your time, and we'll be in touch soon as always.
We'll do. Last but not least, please don't be a trend, be a staple.
Boom. There it is again. Boom. One more time.
Have a great day.
You too.
All right. Take care.
Awesome, folks. Man, that was fantastic. Dr. Kevin Johnson in the building. Next up, we have a woman who, talk about a visionary. This woman is an inspiration, not just to countless athletes around the world, but to me as well. She's become like a sister to me over the past few years. Let me give her an intro so we can hurry up and get her on screen. So Morgan Jones is a speaker, consultant, and impact mentorship program creator. Her mission is to help athletes evolve into their true path, voice, and purpose in life. She's led sold-out events and been featured on CBS News, ABC, and Essence Magazine. She knows what it takes to create a sustainable and authentic brand that transcends past an athlete's playing days. Please welcome to Athletes Entrepreneur, Miss Morgan Jones.
Hey, what's up?
What's going on, Mo? Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Hey, I've been looking forward to this. This is going to be another one of those exclusives because you and I have had several conversations over the past few years. But once again, I don't know the full story. So I'm learning just like everybody else right now. We're going to hear this from A to Z. And once again, I have to give some acknowledgments up front. I've been more intentional about doing that. You and I don't even know if you remember this. I think we connected in 2018 going into 2019. So coming up on 3 years now. But we had a brief conversation, probably only 30 minutes. But before we got off that call, we were just like, yeah, you get it. You know the real. Like, you're actually really trying to do this and have an impact. You're not just following trends. Like Dr. Kev said, this is a mission. This is your life's work. And it's been beautiful over the past few years to watch it manifest and unfold to greater heights than even you probably imagined it would go to. So I just want to give you some love and acknowledgement on that. Props to you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much. That is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Now, I wanted to dive in with, you were All-American, you played at Florida State, and then you had I don't know if I've asked you about your professional career. Where did you play professionally?
I played in Puerto Rico professionally. So after I finished at Florida State in 2015, then I went and played in Puerto Rico for a season.
Got you. And then can you talk a little bit about, you said for a season, so what was it like as your basketball career started to wind down? What was that whole journey like?
Yeah, well, let me go back. I can't even say a full season because no, yeah, my journey kind of came to an end in a very unique way. So when I was in Puerto Rico, I was playing there, and there'd be games where I would hit game-winning shots. There'd be games when I was having a 20-point game. Then the next game, like I'd have 7 points, a couple turnovers, and wouldn't have the greatest performance. I can remember going into the locker room, and the coach, it's just like the Love and Basketball scene you see where you really don't know what they're saying. And then when your team comes over, right, that whole thing played out in my actual reality. And, the coach said, he said, hey, look, if Morgan, you don't score the ball, you go home. You go home, like in his accent. And I'm like, wait, what? You go home. I'm like, wow, it's like that? Like, you're just going to send me home? So that was kind of the reality of like me starting to realize, that as you climb the ladder of sports, love you when you're doing great, hate you when you're not. Dang, where does my value lie? So they ended up cutting me from the team. But ironically, I was invited to be in the All-Star game for the league. So I was off the team, and then I played in the All-Star game, and I happened to get MVP of the All-Star game. So here they are. I'm like the only player out on the court that like really doesn't belong to a team. And then I'm standing in the middle of the floor with the commissioner of the league, and I got my little MVP trophy. And now all of these other teams are like, I'll pick her up. So I got offered another contract to come back for another week. And I can remember thinking to myself, like, okay, this may be the end, Morgan. Like you're really kind of there. This is a pretty clear sign. This is a very high note to go out on. And so if you take this last contract for a week, because they're only going to try you out, if you take this last contract, how do you want it to be? How do you want to say that your journey came to an end, that you closed the chapter, you closed the door? And so what I did was I took my last week of pay contract and I flew my family to Puerto Rico. We stayed at a resort. We were out hanging, whatever, right? And that's how I ended my career, is on a high note with my family, with celebrating what the game has done for me, the kind of really opening the eyes that it may come to an end, and then being excited about the adventure of what's next.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing, Mo. Thank you for sharing that. And that's why I asked, because I think I like to get back to the beginning, because that's where it all started, right? You don't have everything that you're doing now without that experience and without you going out so strong, really taking ownership over that situation. I mean, flying the whole family out, you really did it in style, Mo. That's made. Not only did you get the MVP trophy, but you're like, hey, we're going to have a party in Puerto Rico before I come back home. Thank you for sharing that piece. That was awesome. I didn't know that story at all. So then what happens? Because I know that you were sort of, like you said, you weren't really digging the business side of it. And I didn't play professionally, but I had that experience in college. I just felt like I lost my love for the game. And I think a lot of athletes experience that either in college or professionally. I don't think that's something that's talked about very often. So I appreciate you sharing that. But do you feel like because you were able to, like it wasn't a sudden thing, you were able to see your career starting to wind down? Do you think it gave you a softer landing, or did you still have a lot of challenges once you came back from Puerto Rico?
I still had a lot of challenges. I think every athlete will have challenges. I don't care how prepared you really are. You're going to go through challenges, especially emotionally and mentally. I think, even if you hop into your dream job or you've got that next idea that you're ready to chase, it takes an emotional and a mental toll on you because of the realization that, this game is done. Whether your experience was great or not great, it's a loss in a sense that, it's real exciting at first because you're excited about what's next. And then the realization comes where you realize you don't have a team anymore. You can't just pick up your phone and call your coach for anything. Like, you don't have those going out and hanging out and all of that community that sports brings. So you definitely do struggle. So for me in particular, it was a pretty big awakening, in the sense that, I went back home and, living on the couch with mom and dad, having to drive Uber, had my first sales job that I was super unfulfilled, but I was killing it because it's sales and we're go-getters. So you tell me if I need to hit these 3 markers, I'm gonna do it. But wasn't feeling fulfilled. It was man, this can't be what I'm supposed to really be doing. So how do I find purpose? How do I find more direction? And really be able to stand on my own feet. And so what I did was I started just looking back at the athlete journey and was what was missing? Man, I climbed it, right? I started off as a little girl. I was told the dream's to go pro, get there. However you get there, by all means, get there. And so that's what I was chasing for so long. And then I got there in Puerto Rico or pro, and I'm sleeping in a room with no windows. I have teammates and I'm in a house where no one speaks English. We're eating very low quality food and all that stuff and getting paid barely anything. And I'm whoa, what happened? So, I say all that to say it took me going back into the reflection process, right? Digging deep and saying, man, what could athletes be equipped with, learn, develop to be more prepared for this reality that's going to happen to everyone that and when they decide to step out.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to get to that in a second. We're for sure going to talk about athletes, the visionaries. I want to go back to what you said, because we have this in common with starting out in sales. I was also very good at sales, making great money, but I would find myself on Sunday nights being man, I really have to go back into this office tomorrow morning. I don't know if I could do it. I would be sitting in the parking lot, looking at the office building, trying to muster up the strength just to walk in there to do it all over again. So I appreciate you being transparent with that part of your journey too, because, and I've heard you talk about this too, but I always caution athletes not to be so quick to just go into the 2 things that they tell us athletes to go into after our careers, which is sales and coaching. You have to be very careful with that. Very careful. Just because you're making money in sales, you don't want to find yourself in a weird place where the money's not going to fill that void if you haven't done the internal work. And then I always tell people with coaching too, you don't want to get into coaching just because you don't know anything else and you're staying in your comfort zone. Some athletes make phenomenal coaches, and they definitely should. Other athletes, you'd be better off just exploring other paths. And I know you're really big on sharing that message as well. So let's talk about athletes, the visionaries. Now, was there anything, I know you didn't just leave the sales job and immediately start the business. What was the road to actually having the vision and then starting to build upon that vision?
That's a great question. It was a very slow transition out. So the money that I was making, I started saving. I put it into some terrible investments, like a too expensive website. For some reason, I thought that was it. I made a ton of mistakes initially. But, over time, saving that money. So then I could pivot out and say, okay, this is how I'm going to start, speaking on this, because that felt like what was most natural and figuring out how to navigate this path, because this path doesn't exist. It didn't exist in terms of, personal development for athletes, life skills, if you will. When I was an athlete, we didn't have life skills coordinators. You had your academic advisor and your coaches. So it is a new space, and it's specifically a new space for independent entrepreneurs to come in as third parties and provide insight. So, for me, it was saving, getting prepared, doing a lot of research. I think that was a big part that I had to learn, is I thought college would have fully served me for post athletics and post college. I'm good. I got my degree. I know everything now. What's up? Who's going to hire me? And I realized that I had to do a lot of self-education. And so with some really great mentors that just empowered me to really take ownership of teaching myself everything that I wanted to know. They said, everything that you want to know or you want to learn is on the internet. There's no excuse why anyone can't carve out their own path and make something out of their passion. And so with some great advice for some mentors, I slowly started to make that transition.
Okay, Mo, there's so much there that I want to unpack, because as you were sharing, it's yes. There's so much there that athletes need to hear. You alluded to researching, and of course, researching mentors or researching the industry as a whole, but also getting your skills up. Not just being hey, I have this idea, people should pay me to do this, but enhancing your ability and working on your craft every single day, the same way you did with basketball. So the reason I bring this up is because, as you know, a lot of athletes, I was one of these people too. You get done playing your sport and like you said, somebody should just pay me. Like, I have all these skills without developing skills to be good at other things. Can you talk about, number one, the importance of getting your skills up, and number two, the importance of finding people who can help you and pour into you along the way?
Yeah. One, for getting your skills up, it's just like anything else. Everything comes with a learning curve. So you have to be patient in that. It's the same thing when you first picked up the ball, right? Like, you didn't pick up and start doing crossovers and behind the backs, right? You slowly started working on your left hand. You worked on your right hand. You had to build up those skills. And so it's going into something new with the expectation that there's going to be a learning curve, and giving yourself that, that patience and time and space to learn new things and not feel like you have to have it right away. So for me, that was diving into iMovie at the time, right? iMovie was like video was starting to emerge. So I taught myself iMovie. I would follow people on Instagram that were like Instagram experts, and I would learn how Instagram really works, the algorithm, what to post, what not to post, how to keep people engaged. I went into graphic design, Canva, went in there, started playing with different designs and different messaging and things like that. And so I did a lot of just self-teaching, YouTubing, how to do the lighting for a good setup, all that stuff. And that has served me tremendously now. I mean, it's 5 years later now, I know all that stuff, but I've gotten consulting agreements and contracts off the fact that not only can I bring my expertise, but I also know how to help them with social media. I also know how to design stuff. And so I have so many tools in my pocket that my price goes up. So that's the skill part. In terms of mentors, I'm big on relationships. I think any athletes that are listening to this know that. But I would hope if any athletes that are in college or coming up that are still in it, man, those relationships around you are everything. You don't have time to be mad at people. You don't have time to take things personal. You got time to build relationships and make sure that when you leave that program, institution, school, that you're on a good slate, because you really never know where someone else is going to be. You really never know when they're going to be able to come into your life in a powerful way that's able to pivot your dreams, your desires for your life. So really, it's building strong relationships and being more interested than interesting.
I love that. Can you talk about what that means? Be more interested than interesting. I love that.
I think as athletes, we are so used to people being interested in us, our game, our performance. How's your practice? What's going on? What's next? That we forget to ask questions. We forget to be interested in other people. And so try not to be the most interesting person. When you sit down at a table, redirect the energy that may be coming to you back to them. Learn about people. People want to be seen.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mo. Let's talk about athletes visionaries. For if any reason, if someone's been living under a rock, they haven't heard of this, they don't know about what you're up to, can you please just give us a high level view of what athletes to visionaries is and everything that it encompasses, just all the great work that you're doing?
Okay, so entrepreneurship 101. You're supposed to be able to put it in one sentence what you do.
You don't have to do all that. I want to hear all of it. Yeah.
It's so funny because I just laugh, and I'm only laughing with you, and every other entrepreneur that's on here is like, what do you do? I do a lot. But but specifically, Athletes to Visionaries helps athletes define and design who they are beyond the game. I'm a big believer that you can look at your transition and just go into it by default, or you can look at your transition and see it as something that you design, something that is yours to own. I think there's a lot of power in that, but the power has got to come back to you, and it's got to be within you to be able to land on that next passion, right? The right path for you, your true purpose. So what we do is I work with female athletes in particular because my ladies need more service. They need more tailored resources to their experience versus the male experience. And so we do workshops, we do programs, we have year-long curriculums that we build out to help them start to unravel this. Okay, it's great to say I'm more than an athlete, right? But what does that really mean? And how do I start to address some conditioning that I have within me that may not serve me in the long run? So we do that in many different ways.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, thank you for sharing that, by the way, but I just wanted to acknowledge that's one of the things from the get-go that I love about your work. Of course, after having that initial conversation with you and us getting to know each other, but also just watching from a distance, one of the things that's very clear about athletes to visionaries is that you have a holistic approach. And I think, you know, as the transition space has started to expand, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I'm saying this purely as a compliment to you. There's a difference between just talking about it, like you said, and posting memes, and actually getting on the ground and actually helping people on a personal one-on-one or group level. And I think that the fact, like you mentioned, there has to be, you have to go beneath the surface and address things that could potentially, because the last thing you want to do through your work or through anyone who does this type of work is help someone and they're getting tripped up down the line once they start to find success because you didn't address certain things up front. So I love that you shared that. Let's talk about one of the more recent ventures, I guess, for lack of a better term, with athletes and visionaries, which is the Vision Box. Can you talk to us about the Vision Box? That's been awesome to see.
Yeah, the Vision Box is a toolkit to help you start to design, you know, who you are today, tomorrow, in the future. And, you know, it's something that's dear to me because it was my way that I pulled myself out of my athlete identity, that I started to say, okay, Morgan, here you are, Uber sales job, unfulfilled, partying. Is this going to be your life? Right? So what I did was I created a really powerful vision board. And, you know, I had the same kind of connotation that a lot of people do have around vision boards. We're like, oh, it's cute, you know, it's fluffy, right? But as athletes, like, we want results tomorrow. You know, we're trained to want results. But when I started doing more research about it and how powerful our minds are in training our subconscious mind through images and powerful words and affirmations, I kind of took the jump and I made a vision board that had absolutely nothing to do with my reality. Like there was nothing realistic on my vision board. Everything reflected who I wanted to become, the type of impact that I wanted to have on people, the type of platforms that I wanted to speak on, the type of ways that I want to show up in rooms, all those very self-empowering, who is Morgan, pictures and images. And from when I made it in 2016, now I really even go to 2021, 80% of my vision board has manifested. I look at those images every day and say, that's where I'm going. And I think it's very important that everyone has some form of visual somewhere where they see every day that reminds them where they're going. Because if you rely on your social media feed to tell you where you're going, you're gonna be stuck right where you started. So it's really creating that intentional space for yourself, giving yourself permission to dream, giving yourself permission to wire and design your mind and your reality in the way that you want it to go.
Yeah, I love that. And that was one of the things that I really liked about your direction with the Vision Box from the get-go is that, like you said, if you tell an athlete just make a vision board, they're like, I don't have time for that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but if you give them a tool, like you've done with multiple, it's not just the box itself is a tool, but there's tools within the tool, which is really cool. I didn't mean to rhyme, but you know what I'm saying? Like that is pretty cool. I love that you've done that because you're empowering. Like you said, we keep coming back to that word empowering, and we keep coming back to the word create. And that's what you've done, not just with the Vision Box, but through your work is empowering athletes, specifically female athletes, to create the next chapter of their lives and create a holistic, well-rounded version of themselves, which is a beautiful thing. So I don't mean to be all up in your business, but we have to talk about, this was exciting to me when I saw something recently happen with a certain company with the Vision Box. Do you want to share that? There was a company. Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you go.
Yeah. So when I created the Vision Box, you know, I started off with just a small quantity. And, you know, I everyone that's on here too, I think this is a great audience of just entrepreneurs because you guys all appreciate this. And then people that are looking and aspiring to be entrepreneurs is, it's great. It's great information that's on here. But specifically, I started off in my house. Like I had all these boxes. I designed the box. I put everything. I put the stickers on the box. I packed the box, the whole 9 yards. My apartment was a hot mess. And I was like, I had all these boxes, and it's so funny because I had all these boxes. And then I'm like, oh, wait, now I have to market and tell people why they need the box. And so that was like a whole nother hurdle. But, long story short, the box started circulating and got a lot of really good traction. And someone at Google got a hold of the Vision Box and was like, this is incredible. We want to get this for all of our employees. How many do you have? And so they bought my entire inventory. And so the Vision Box has been, in California, in Wyoming, in Africa. I sent one to Brazil. And it was a really cool experience because they all use the Vision Box as an opportunity to come together and talk about their visions, because Google had just transitioned everyone to remote. And so it was just the perfect activity and kind of time they could spend together. So that was very, very cool and very blessed.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And you're so humble, you didn't even bring it up when you were sharing. I was like, I'm for sure going to bring it up. And I know, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was just going to say, like, the reason I wanted to bring that up is, like you said, there are people who are going to be so inspired by that, because it's not about, like, yes, it's cool to have your brand and your vision associated with Google. And I know that's not why you do what you do. It's not about clout. It's about having an impact. But I think it is such a huge milestone. And to have a nod and an acknowledgement from Google is just a testament to the quality of the work you're doing. So that's why I wanted you to share that. I thought it was super cool when I saw that. And then
it goes back to, like, always, if you're rooted in the right thing, you're doing things for the right reasons, you're really, operating from a heart of service, things take care of themselves.
Yes, indeed. I wanted to ask you about this. I think this would be a good time for you to give some advice to athletes or entrepreneur, anybody who is, maybe they have a clear why around why they want to do something. Mm-hmm. Maybe they have a clear what they want to do, but I think a lot of people get tripped up on the how. Because you've had a clear vision of how you wanted to do it, and that takes different shapes for many different people. But what advice can you give to someone who's trying to figure out, okay, I know what I want to do, but, like, how do I figure out the best process of doing this?
Start. The thing is like, no one truly has the formula to what's going to help you get up every day and be excited about what you do. So if you have an idea and you want to go towards the t-shirt business, or you want to take it towards, a podcast or whatever it is, at the end of the day, it's like, you're going to have to get up and do it. And so I would just say start and refine as you go. Don't release the expectation that your first venture is you're just going to be on fire and it's going to be lit. Like, release that. Nope. Just start and refine as you go, because you'll get better and better and better as you go. That's when you're starting off as, I have this idea, I've got this passion, I want to see what it can do or where it could go. That's that. If you're talking about going like an investor route and getting money and, like, really building out something that you feel like, is very, like, sustainable or innovative, I guess you can say, research. It's something that's not fun. I absolutely hate researching, but now I will not go into another conversation without researching something. Like, everyone has ideas, but who wins are the people that actually know, like, what's already existing in that space. How effective can this be? What financial breakdown do I need to really consider to be able to do this? And if you do the right research up front, you're going to be better off in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love what you said about just starting and then refining as you go. I think that really is the strongest advice you can give to someone, because then a lot of people get caught up in paralysis by analysis and never get anything done. And the vision that they have never takes shape because they never did anything. So, hey, Mo, I have no idea what just happened, by the way.
I don't either.
It might just be my phone or something. I completely forgot what I was saying, but I love the advice on that. Just one more question before we wrap it up. You've already accomplished so much. You're already doing great things in the world. Like I said, you're an inspiration to many, including me. What is next for Morgan Jones? What is next for, athletes to visionaries, all of that?
I mean, next for me is just continuing to get smarter in the way that I do business. That's for me. In terms of the, athletes to visionaries and stuff like that, we're right now, we're in a space where we have created something really powerful that we haven't even put out on social media or anything like that. And so we have our pitch month next month that we'll be pitching with a lot of different universities. And so it's very an innovative program that we really feel like can truly help transitioning, specifically senior graduate student transitioning out athletes. And so our hope is that we're able to set this up in a way that's sustainable with the right partners. So that's where we're at with Athletes to Visionaries, and it's going to work. It's going to go great because I've done the work. When you put that work in and you learn, like I talked about before, and everyone that's on this call, I didn't start this way, right? I didn't start, getting calls and getting in rooms with athletic directors at Power 5 conferences. Of course, I didn't start there, right? Through this work, though, now that's where I'm at, right? So whatever your idea is, whatever it is you're working towards, don't be afraid of the groundwork. Don't be afraid of the gritty work. It's the same way when you were hustling to become the best athlete you can be. It's the same thing in business. You got to start on the ground. You got to humble yourself. You got to listen. You got to want to learn and take the expectation that you're going to be an overnight success, because everyone on this call knows that doesn't happen in sports and it don't happen in business. Allow the process, give yourself time, and be mindful as you're moving forward.
That's a perfect way for us to close out, Mo. Thank you for that. We just need, all that's missing right now is like a smoke machine or some fireworks in the background or something. But that was awesome. Thank you so much for that. Before we officially close out, please tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can follow your journey and watch everything continue to unfold, how they can get the vision box, all of that.
Absolutely. So Visions with Mo on Instagram, on all social medias, Visions with an S with WITH Mo, M-O. And then the vision box will actually be ready for pre-order in July. So that'll be ready to go again then.
Awesome. Well, Mo, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I know people are going to get so much out of this. For you to take the time out on a Saturday to do this and be authentic with your journey and drop some gems. I'm extremely grateful to you. So I appreciate all that you do, and we'll be in touch soon, as always.
Likewise, man. You're awesome. Anytime.
Thanks, Mo. Take care.
Bye.
All right, folks, there you have it. Athletes Entrepreneur 9. Stay tuned for next month. We'll be back with the 10th. Can you believe it? The 10th Athletes Entrepreneur panel. As always, this event is brought to you by Self-Published in 30 Days. Thank you to Dana for being on the ones and twos, the director of programming, Dana Gunn. And this book is also brought to you by the one and only ThriveAfterSports. Make sure you grab your book. Make sure you tune in on the Thrive After Sports podcast. Everybody have a beautiful weekend. We'll see you soon.